Hey friends, today we're working on a 2004 Volkswagen Jetta, TDI wagon in this case. We're just putting a lift kit on. We blew a hole in the oil pan the other day just driving down a grid road, so it's time to lift it up some. We already finished the job, but I figured, well, you know what, I'd struggled so much with this job, I might just go ahead and make a quick video on it. Now, unfortunately, my phone's low, so you got your strut back there. And, here, let's do that actually. One strut bolt there. I'm assuming it's probably a 15 mil. You're gonna have to loosen that, but first, of course, 17 mil and the special lock socket for your wheels. Break all those loose. If you don't have a lock socket in your car, you can get a replacement. I ended up buying a whole kit on eBay, I think, for 70 or 80 bucks. I can't remember, but don't mind the old razor there. That thing actually needs a little bit of tuning too. But anyway, so break those loose. And then once you've got it jacked up, make sure you don't do it under the cradle or whatever they call it, because that's the piece you want to drop just far enough to where you can get the springs out. See the spring over there and over here. And all it is the bushing that's on top of the spring. You basically, you take the bottom of the struts off. I think that makes it free. You jack it up, lift it up, drop it down until the springs are loose. You take the old bushing out, you pop the new one in. It's a thicker one. It's a spacer. We bought a kit online for like 100 bucks. And that's what I'm talking about now. It's from Russia. The kit, it has 2 little spacers in the front and 2 big ones. 2 big bushings for the back and 2 little spacers in the front that just slide over top the strut. And the front's what I struggled with. But yeah, you just take that. And then, like I said, the only tool you should need is your 17 for your wheels, the lock, and then, of course, your jacks, your jack stands, and then your 15 mil. The front, I struggled with quite a bit. Same story, you want to break all your lugs loose on the ground. Then you got this plastic cover here. You pop that off. They're threaded, but usually they're cracked. And then you take that off. That's a 21 mil, I believe, or a 13/16. Impact makes that a heck of a lot easier. That's what I used. I didn't even have to bother with the stupid Allen's key. I don't even know what size that is, and I don't even know how I'd get it off without an impact, honestly. But you'd have to get creative somehow and get an Allen key, get some kind of ratchet to where you can have a hole on top to put an Allen key through, and then hold that while you spin it loose, I suppose would work. But anyway, you pop that off, and then there's another one underneath. This is just what secures it to the strut tower. Pop that off. There's another one underneath that actually holds the top of the spring plate, the strut. That when you have the whole strut assembly, it holds the spring on top. So you want to back that off a little bit, but you want to make sure you have pressure on it when you do, because when you do drop it, because if it's just hanging freely, it's going to pop up when that comes off, and that might send bits flying everywhere. It could damage something. So make sure, even just use a bottle jack like I did on this side, and keep that under there. Keep some pressure in there when you're doing it before you take the spring plate off. And honestly, what I would even do before I do any of that is jack it up a little bit, get a little bit of tension in there. There's really not much here, but I use 2 straps because, like I said, you don't have to compress the spring much. If you do it a lot, it's very freaking dangerous. But just be careful, compress the springs, and then I use a strap on each side. Use one on the other side too. I took it off already. That's actually, those colors I think are for your spring rate. That tells you what kind of springs you have, if I'm not mistaken. The shades of blue and sometimes red or whatever they have. But anyway, compress those evenly on each side, one on this side, one on this side. Like I said, they don't have to be super compressed, the spring. So you jack it up some, compress it, and then you can back this off and then take that off altogether, actually, the nut underneath. And then once you have it all loose, then drop this down, and then it separates. You'll have your spring plate on top, and that sits on the bearing. I believe there has to be a bearing for when you steer your wheels, right? So it can spin in there. Make sure the bearing spins freely, otherwise you got to replace it. And then that sits in the big old rubber bushing, of course, which is in here. And the spacer goes in between the spring plate. It goes in between the spring plate and the bearing so that it spaces the springs rather than the strut itself. These struts don't even have springs in them, I don't think. I think they're just gas, so they just go up and down. They don't actually push up automatically or anything like that. And then the hardest part, honestly, is getting it back in there, up top there. You see where the shaft ends, getting it in back in that hole. Oh, it's a pain in the butt. But make dang sure you take your sway bar link off before you do anything else with this strut stuff, because otherwise you can't manipulate your struts individually on each side. Makes it way easier. I struggled for like 3 hours before I realized I had to take the sway bar link off because I'm an idiot. But anyway, that's the hardest part. Make sure when you're trying to get it in there, what I ended up using actually was a channel lock, and I just had it in there like that, and then you can kind of pry. You grab the shaft. I'm not too worried about my shocks. That's very, very hard metal anyway. You can't really hurt it, but even if you did, I'm getting new shocks anyway, so just be careful with that. You can pry that up, and then kind of guide it up here with an Allen wrench. Works pretty good. You got it in there, and once you get it far enough through, just be careful. Make dang sure it's sliding in underneath, because it'll come through just enough to where you can't really get your nut on there, or maybe just barely, if it's not going through all the way. So you got to make sure you line it up, pull it through, and then very gently, I would say, finger tighten it, and then use the impact and gently start to tighten it more. That's what I did, and I finally got it to work on both sides. So anyway, hopefully that helps somebody. It was a pain in the butt, and what I'm going to do now, so I guess again to summarize, the tools you need would be the 15 mil for the sway bar link and your rear struts, and then the 17 mil of course, and your special lock socket for the lugs, and then a 21 or a 13/16 here. Don't mind, that's my John Deere heater in the corner. You can't even see it, but sure is noisy. And then an impact helps. Like I said, without an impact you might have a hard time. You need a torque wrench to tighten them back up again. I used the breakover bar for the sway bar links because it was a pain to get it off otherwise. And I actually have a set of spring compressors. That's what I was using my 19mm wrench for, but I didn't really end up using them because they didn't fit. But anyway, let's put the wheels back on and see how it looks. This particular lift kit's supposed to give it, I think, 20mm, just over half an inch, like 5/8 inch or something of a lift. So not much, but definitely better than nothing for sure. I don't know how much more I want to lift it, because I didn't want to lift it to begin with. We do a lot of highway driving, so I don't want it tall, but I want a little more ground clearance than what we've got. So let's put the wheels on, see what it looks like, rather. Well, there you have it. It's hard to tell, but there's no jack under it now, but we got a little bit more space in the wheels now, quite a bit more actually, and the same with the back. So my phone's about to die, so as always, hope this video helps somebody. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. I know it was rushed and unorganized, but hey, best of luck, and like I said, feel free to comment. As always, may God bless you.